Today on Face the Nation, ready on the right, but is the Republican establishment ready for what may be ahead? An enormous crowd gathered in Washington yesterday to hear Fox News personality Glenn Beck and Sarah Palin talk about restoring America's honor. They said it wasn't political, but will it have an impact on the midterm elections? We'll talk to Palin favorite Joe Miller, who may have toppled the Republican establishment candidate in Alaska, Lisa Murkowski. We'll get the take of Mississippi's Republican Governor Haley Barbour. Then we'll turn to Kendrick Meek, the young African-American who won the Democratic Senate nomination in Florida. Is he getting the support he'll need from the Obama administration? And we'll bring in Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the congresswoman from Florida, to see how Democrats intend to counter all this. I'll have a final thought on science's need for basic research. But first, shake up on the right on Face the Nation.
Face the Nation with CBS News Chief Washington Correspondent Bob Schieffer. And now from CBS News in Washington, Bob Schieffer.
And good morning again. We're going first this morning to Fairbanks, Alaska, to talk to Joe Miller, who may have defeated incumbent Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski, a member of the Senate leadership, in the Republican primary up there. We have to stress may have beaten Senator Murkowski because they are still counting votes, and at last count he was running about 1,700 votes ahead. It may be 2 weeks before we know the final outcome there. But the fact, Joe Miller, that you ran the kind of race you did and that that it's coming down to the wire is fairly surprising, I would say, to a lot of people, even those in the Republican Party. But you seem to be, or could be, kind of the poster boy for these anti-establishment Republicans who are giving the Republican establishment such a run this year. I guess the first question we have to ask you, and I want to tell our viewers first, there is a delay in the sound reaching you, so there'll be some delay between my questions and your answers, but it's our audio. It's not because you're sitting there trying to think of an answer. It's just the audio. How did you do it, Joe Miller?
Well, you know, there are a number of factors. It involved, of course, obviously Governor Palin's endorsement, Governor Huckabee's endorsement, Lieutenant Governor Lehman, a number of radio personalities here in Alaska, including Dan Fagan, Glenn Beagle, and really at the base of it, our volunteer network. This is a very small state population-wise, and elections here are determined by the strength of your volunteer network. And we had volunteers that worked day and night. They covered every quadrant of the state. It was just an extraordinary effort.
There is a lot of federal money that pours into Alaska. In fact, I think Alaska ranks about second per capita of the amount of federal dollars that come into the state. As you say, a small state, 700,000 population. You've said that we can't afford all that federal money that's pouring into Alaska. Should Alaska get less money from the federal government?
You know, the government is going bankrupt. I don't think anybody can deny it's sitting at $13.3 trillion in absolute debt. By some estimates, $130 trillion in future unfunded obligations, that we are in any way in a good financial state. And that means that everybody in this nation is going to have to do some belt tightening. I think that's just common sense. But I think the answer to this is to basically transfer the responsibilities and power of government back to the states and the people. That is really the only answer, I think, out of this crisis. And for Alaska, that means our resource base. And certainly this state, with its resources, could be incredibly independent, incredibly economically powerful. But that really is the answer to the crisis that we're in right now.
Well, I mean, are you going to the voters now as November beckons here and say, folks, I got to tell you, I'm going to go back to Washington and tell them to send us less federal money? Is that your campaign promise?
What we're telling Washington, D.C. is that we're in transition. What that means is as we continue to tighten our belts, because fiscally that's critical for the economic solvency of this nation, we also transfer to the states more power, and that means more ownership of lands. It's not a situation where you just yank the financial plug, but at the same time you're transferring over discretion over the use of the resource base. In this state, 2/3 of it is owned by the federal government. there really isn't good constitutional basis for that. It's our position that as the money is restricted, the lands are transferred. And so that's the plan that we want to implement.
Now, you said no to stimulus money, that Alaska should create its own jobs. How would you go about doing that?
The resource base is extraordinary in this state. We have a hydrocarbon resource base, a mineral base, which is extraordinary, beyond that of any other state. The resources in this state, if only a fraction of them were tapped, would create more than enough jobs for the residents of this state and could be the economic engine, frankly, of the United States. We are an incredible state with incredible resources.
You have also taken some fairly controversial, some would say very extreme positions. First, you say you want to phase out Medicare. You want to privatize Social Security. I have to say there are a lot of people in Alaska who are on Medicare and are getting Social Security. Isn't that position going to be a problem for you in the election, in this general election?
Well, yeah, and I would suggest to you that if one thinks that the Constitution is extreme, then you'd also think that the founders are extreme. We just simply want to get back to basics, restore essentially the constitutional foundation of the country, and that means the federal government becoming less onerous, less involved in every basically item of our lives. And what that means is there does have to be some transition. With respect to Social Security, what we've said consistently throughout this race is that if you've paid into the system, if you're dependent on the system, we have got to get the fiscal house in order at the national level so that we can continue to pay those benefits. But to suggest that there is nothing that can be done, that we have to continue as the way things are, ignores the fact that the trust fund is empty. It's full of IOUs. It ignores the fact that as of April of this year, there are more expenditures or there are more outlays coming out from Social Security than inlays. And it would be incredibly irresponsible for us to sit back and say that this is something that shouldn't be addressed. There are a lot of different options out there. We have to look at all the options that are out there, including privatization. It's something certainly that Bush championed in his first administration, something that Representative Ryan is looking at. I believe that it is irresponsible. It is basically part of the crisis of leadership in D.C. to not look at Social Security and understand that there has got to be a solution posed. We've got to take a look at it and make sure that we create a solution so our seniors aren't left out in the cold.
Well, I want to thank you for being with us this morning. I hope we can visit with you again as we get closer to November. Joe Miller, who may turn out to be the Republican nominee for the Senate, ending a 30-year period when either Lisa Murkowski or her father represented that state in the United States Senate. Next, we're going to go south. We're going to turn to the winner of the Democratic Senate primary in Florida, Congressman Kendrick Meek, who is in Orlando this morning, and a very different story going on down there, Congressman. You know, you beat a very wealthy Democrat who had kind of a controversial past or ties to people like Mike Tyson and so forth, stories about narcotics being used at parties that he held. But the backstory seems to be to your race that some Democrats are not all that happy that you won, because they're worried that you may take votes away from Charlie Crist, the incumbent governor, who's running as an independent in that Senate race down there. And Charlie Crist has hinted that he will vote with the Democrats to organize the Senate. In other words, help them to keep their majority. And that could be critical because this is going to be a close election in November. And some Democrats are actually not so happy that you won. I mean, how do you deal with that?
Well, those are individuals, many of whom that are not in the state of Florida. I'm very excited at the fact that I beat a billionaire that spent $26 million in falsehood ads and what have you to try to win the nomination. What I do know is the fact that a super majority of Democrats, some 20+% more, voted for me than my opponent. I am the nominee. I don't believe that I'm in the position to say that I will be the one taking votes away from Charlie Crist. He decided to bail out of the Republican primary when he noticed that he was not going to win that primary. I stuck in my primary and fought, and that's what I'm going to do as a United States Senator. I'm the only candidate in this race that is won by a popular vote in a contested primary. I look forward to capitalizing on that because there's vast differences between myself and the other two lifelong Republicans that are in this race. I'm the only pro-choice candidate in this race. I'm the only person that stood up the oil companies in this race before and after the BP spill with a 100% environmental record. And I'm the only person that fought against higher credit card fees in Congress and stood up for veterans. So I think as this race moves on, we will see more of an equalization of the polling numbers. And I think Democrats, those individuals, opinion makers that are out there, will see that I am the individual that can win and will win this Senate seat here in Florida. But I'm glad that Floridians counted me in.
Have you gotten any assurances from the White House yet that Barack Obama is coming to Florida to campaign for you, or in fact, do you want him down there?
Well, and that's another interesting piece. President Obama came down like 7 days before the primary. He didn't have to do that. We went to a sandwich shop together to show his support of my candidacy. He's always said that he supported my candidacy for the Senate. President Clinton did 3 rallies here in Florida. He looks to do more. I'm pretty sure the president will be coming back. We welcome him to come back. I think the relationship of knowing that we can count on support nationally is so very, very important.
Let me ask you this. The reason that Charlie Crist is running as an independent is because the Tea Party candidate, Marco Rubio, looked like a shoe-in for the Republican nomination, and in fact, he got it. Now, we had a lot of people here in Washington yesterday at this enormous rally. It wasn't billed as political, but a lot of folks from the Tea Party were there. What did you think of that rally yesterday? What's your take on it? And do you think the Tea Party is going to be a major factor come November?
I think that the governor and Marco Rubio will be fighting for the Tea Party vote. I believe that this is America. Folks can come together and rally anytime they get ready. But what I do know here in Florida, majority of Floridians feel that both of the candidates in this race are far right of the positions that should be taken here. We have to move to a cleaner transportation system here in Florida. We have to make sure that we create green jobs and not just use them as a talking point with tax credits and supporting local governments like St. Lucie County here in Florida, where GE is seriously considering relocating their solar initiative here in Florida that will create blue-collar jobs and white-collar jobs. So I'm very, very excited about where I am and where the other two candidates are, because it's a clear choice, and I have a forward lean towards growing Florida's economy.
All right. Congressman, we're going to have to stop it there just because of time. Thank you for being with us. Hope we can check in with you down the trail. And we'll be back in 1 minute with Haley Barbour and Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
I was just curious, I guess. So I went on Ancestry.com, typed in some names, and up popped this little leaf. I clicked on it and saw all these documents. I even found out that my great-great-grandparents lived next door to the Wright brothers. I mean, who forgot to mention that?
Visit Ancestry.com and discover the world's largest online family history resource.
You don't have to know what you're looking for. You just have to start looking.
Your discovery starts right now on Ancestry.com.
This is Rachel, a busy mom. She starts at dawn, and so does her back pain. That's 2 pills for a 4-hour drive. The drive is done, so it's a day of games and 2 more pills. The games are over, her pain is back. That's 2 more pills. And when she's finally home, but hang on, just 2 Aleve can keep back pain away all day with fewer pills than Tylenol. This is Rachel, who chose Aleve and 2 pills for a day free of pain. And get the all-day pain relief of Aleve and liquid gels.
And we're back now with Republican Governor of Mississippi, Haley Barbour. He's in Biloxi this morning, and Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who joins us from Miami. Well,